Hello everyone, my name is RogueGold. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Today, I'm going to be doing my very best to create the ultimate beginner's guide to PvP in The Division 2. This has not been an easy task, let me tell you. Trying to condense the past 6 years of my learnings and experience with player versus player combat in the Division franchise to one, 30-minute video, that's not easy, but this video has been beyond highly requested from my audience. It's something that I've been deeply passionate about trying to create for a long time now, and I think I'm finally prepared enough to try and tackle it. The problem, and also kind of the beauty with PvP in the Division, is that it is so unique. It doesn't play the same way you play PvE content, and the game offers practically zero advice for someone to try and learn how to play PvP. So in this video, I'm going to do my absolute best to hit on every single point you need to know before heading into PvP in the Division 2. There's a lot to cover, so I'm going to try and be as concise and efficient as I can, but I cannot guarantee any sort of short length here. We're getting fully into the details of things because that's what you have to do in order to get a grasp of what PvP requires of you. And so please, if while you're watching you want more clarification on something I mentioned, or you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them down below in the comments. I will do my very best to answer. So welcome again. I'm glad you're here. I don't often do this, but if you do end up enjoying this guide, then I would kindly ask that you share this around. PvP in this franchise really means a lot to me. It's offered me my favorite moments in gaming ever, and any chance I can have to introduce more people to that experience would be a blessing. And my audience is only a tiny fraction of the amount of people who could try out the Division's PvP and end up loving it. So again, if you hear my thoughts and enjoy this guide, then please consider sharing it around. I really appreciate it. As we get into things here, I will note to you that the many topics I'm going to cover in this guide are timestamped down below in the description for your convenience. If maybe you are someone who already plays PvP and you just want to hear my thoughts on a very specific topic, then surely that will be of great use to you. If, however, you are of the target audience here, a beginner to the realm of PvP who really wants to learn everything you need to, I would caution against skipping around or to one specific point that you feel as though you want to learn about. While all of these topics are certainly independent from one another, I have structured this guide and my script to set a solid foundation and then build each component from there, meaning that each topic I'm going to cover builds upon the last to hopefully get you to a place of better understanding by the end of the video. So certainly use the timestamps if you need them. They're a great resource if you want to return to this video later on and practice your skills a bit, but if this is your first time listening and you are indeed a beginner to PvP, I would highly advise listening chronologically the entire way through. I apologize the video is so long, I know that's asking a lot, but I truly think I've created a comprehensive guide and experience here that should help you gain a better understanding of what you need to do in order to succeed within PvP in the Division 2. Before anything else, I want to begin with a phrase that I think is of the utmost importance for this entire discussion. I can teach you my way, I cannot teach you the right way. What do I mean by that? Well, simply put, there is no right way to play PvP in this game. Just like there's no right way to play any video game. Who's to say that there's more value behind questing in World of Warcraft than there is getting all of your levels through Battlegrounds? Who's to say that it's better to play a Titan in Destiny than it is a Hunter? Who's to say it's better in real life to buy this house than it is buy the one across the street? My point is, as with many other things, but certainly in the Division 2, there are endless ways you could develop your skills and play PvP, from which types of builds you use, whether you play more aggressively or passively, do you go rogue, do you not, and there's no one who can say that any of those ways are better than the other, but everyone certainly has their preferences, and so, again, I can teach you how I play PvP, I can teach you the things that have allowed me to succeed in that realm for the past 6 years and how I've grown to enjoy it so much, but that comes with its own entire list of build types I generally use, a playstyle I've developed, a general set of guidelines I stick to in the DZ and in PvP, so I can teach you my way, but I cannot teach you the right way, because there is no right way. And after you finish hearing my ideas and thoughts, I of course highly encourage you all to go out and seek other ideas and opinions. Ask your other favorite creators how they approach PvP. Try and go in and learn how your friends play it sometimes. All of that. And hopefully, from doing that, you'll develop your own unique way to approach PvP combat in the Division. Also, with all of that said, to any of my fellow creators or PvP lovers who may be listening, I highly encourage you to leave some of your own lessons and thoughts on PvP down in the comments below. They might contradict mine. You may completely disagree with some of the things I will say in this guide. But as I said, that's the beauty of PvP in this franchise, is that widely different tactics can work, and it's all about how you execute them. So let's get a discussion going and share our ideas down below for any newcomers to PvP in the Division to utilize. So, as many of you know, or have probably been able to guess by now, I'm sure, I'm a huge Division PvP fan. It's what I have running in the background of the majority of my videos, and it's certainly what I've spent the most time doing out of anything else across the Division 1 and 2. And so I was shocked at a suggestion someone sent in when I asked for people's opinions on what to include in this video. They asked, what motivates you to play PvP? Why should I care or want to try out PvP? And I think that's a brilliant question. It's something that I haven't considered for the past 6 years, ever since I first fell in love with it in this franchise. But for someone who's never had any experience with PvP or the DZ, and all they hear about is the toxicity and griefing and this and that, I don't blame you at all. If your feeling is, why the hell would I want to learn how to partake in that? I think it's a hugely important question to try and sort out before we dive into the specifics here, because if you don't really care about what you're learning, you're not going to learn it very well. Believe me, that's something that transcends far beyond the realm of video games, and so obviously I can't give you a reason as to why you should care about PvP. This is why you should like it. This is why you should be playing it, because the truth is some people simply won't. They will not ever have the desire nor will ever care about player versus player combat, and that's completely fine. My goal with this video isn't to try and convert you into some sort of cult, but I figured it might be valuable to let you guys know what motivates me personally, why I love PvP in the Division, and why I continue to play it so much. Because as I said before, I think a lot of stuff gets drowned out by the toxic DZ, griefing, camping, yada yada, and so perhaps by me sharing some of this, it might resonate with you and sound like something you might want to try and pursue as you grow into and begin your PvP journey. I think the simplest way I can explain it is, it's infinitely replayable at an ever-changing difficulty level. Every time I go into the DZ, my experience is going to be different. I'm going to fight different people with different playstyles in different locations using different strategies with my own different builds. I think part of the problem with being a PvE-only Division fan is that your enjoyment is highly subject to the developer's content schedule. If there's a lapse in content for 6, 8, 12 months like we've seen in 2021, eventually you're just going to run out of new engaging things to do, because PvE content is finite, at least the way it's structured in the Division 2. Whereas in PvP, with all of its faults and all the unbalance and whatever, I'm still mentally stimulated each time I go in there to fight. Sometimes we're going to stomp a 4v8, sometimes I'm going to get my ass handed to me in a 1v3. Sometimes we're going to fight out in the open and have an all-out brawl, sometimes we're going to play strategic and use the environment to our advantage. And it's that freedom and that thought of the unknown that draws me back to PvP each time I log on. I believe wholeheartedly that there is no greater challenge in the Division than that of PvP, because you can't master it. You can't learn the enemy spawns and know the exact timing of things and master exactly how long it'll take you to put down every player, because every person you run into is going to be using something different. There are different levels of skill, and that's what keeps me going, because ultimately you can never master PvP. And I've been playing this for 6 years, and I'm not the best out there. There's always somebody better than you, always a better strategy or plan you could have executed in a fight, always a build you could have been running that would have better countered the enemy, and it's that endless challenge and endless learning process that keeps me coming back to the Division's PvP. So I hope that helps shine some light on why I think PvP is so wonderful, why I think it's worth every player dipping their toe into just a little bit, because there's such a vast amount of fun and challenge that can be had underneath that continually perpetuated stigma of toxicity and all of that. So there you have it. I hope that helped, and thank you to the person who asked the question. I think that was the perfect thing to cover before we dive in. So before we get any further, let's talk about the differences between the Dark Zone and Conflict. This guide is unapologetically going to be skewed towards how to PvP in the Dark Zone. Why, you may ask? Well, frankly, I don't consider Conflict to be a good representation of Division PvP. It doesn't mean the lessons that you learn for the DZ cannot be carried over there, and I will have a small Conflict section later on in the video just to provide some guidance in that realm, but in short, Conflict betrays one of the Division's most core elements in that it removes your radar. It removes the ability to see players coming from afar. It removes that ultra situational awareness that has been core to the Division's PvP experience ever since 2016. And so you're left with a lot of camping, hiding, playing passively and to try to get the jump on people, an overabundance of uncounterable skills and status effects to exploit the mode's lack of armor kits and more. And frankly, I just don't think that's a good way for someone to learn Division PvP. As I said, you can take the lessons that you learn from this and apply them to Conflict, but the way you functionally interact and engage with PvP in the Division 2's DZ is the same way you played it in Division 1's Dark Zone, in Skirmish, in Last Stand, and I assure you that it will be the way you engage with it in Heartland, in the Division 3, one day down the road. And so because Conflict is such an anomaly in that regard and such a betrayal, I'm not going to focus on it in this guide, though as I said, I will have a short section on it later on. Next important thing to cover are the differences between team play versus solo play. This guide is going to focus on and assume you're tackling PvP as a solo player, in the sense that I want to equip you with every tool you need to take on the DZ and take on other players by yourself with your own skills and with your own build. Now luckily, unlike the differences between the DZ and Conflict, there isn't much difference between solo and group play functionally. It just means that you'll have more more people to rely on, more potential damage output, more options for team buffs and exotic skills, all of that stuff. And again, I will have a section later on in the video introducing you to the fundamentals of team play and how to be successful with it, but the meat of this guide will be focused on how to succeed as a solo PvP player because it's the best place to start, in my opinion, and because you're not always going to have a group, and it's an important skill to have in this game to be able to just rely on yourself. So just want to clear that up as we move along. One of the last things to cover before we dive into the details here is another factor that you might not think of right away, but again, with this guide, I want to try and consider every possible variable in your PvP experience, and that undoubtedly includes Keener's Watch, which is of course the new progression system that you gain access to once you hit level 40 and complete the Warlords of New York campaign. I bring this up because your watch and the associated SHD level is undoubtedly going to impact your experience in PvP and the DZ one way or another. The majority of people playing these days in the DZ who are serious about PvP are going to be Overwatch level 1000, which if you didn't know is the maximum possible level at which you can gain additional statistical benefits. You can of course go over level 1000, but you'll no longer be gaining any additional stats or power bonuses from it. So if you're someone who is not yet SHD level 1000, then I just want to provide you with a fair warning that it is just another thing that's going to put you at a disadvantage. Now if you're close to 1000, like 750, then you don't have too much to worry about, honestly. You're only missing out on a few percentage points on probably some of the lesser important stats once you're that far along. But if you're at 500, less than 500, 250, then it's certainly going to be a noticeable chunk of power that you're missing, because at watch level 1000, you're gaining 10% additional total armor, 10% extra weapon damage, 10% hazard protection, extra crit chance, damage, weapon handling, skill haste, etc. So again, just figured I would put that out there for all of you to know that unless you are at watch level 1000, you will be at a disadvantage against the majority of PvP players in the DZ. And there's really no way to work around that except for going out and leveling up towards 1k. It's not out yet when I'm releasing this guide, but the upcoming expertise system with the new content will certainly compound this issue and drive a further wedge between those who are leveled and those who aren't. So if you're serious about learning and getting better at PvP, then I recommend trying your best to minimize the gap in that regard. One other thing I figured I would do before we jump into the meat of the guide here is give you guys a bit of a rundown of a few settings that I highly recommend you at least keep in mind when you head into PvP, and these are things that you might not necessarily have to worry about too much when you're just engaging with some more casual PvE content. And so I just want to point them out to you at the very least to give you a sense of what you might want to look into when you head into your first DZ and PvP experience. So the first thing is, we'll show you that my sensitivities, which apparently I can't think of where it is. Here we go. I have a 14 camera and a 20 aim. So obviously the camera is when you're not scoped in or not aiming down sights, you're just looking around, and the aim is of course when you are aiming down sights. That's what I have mine at. You basically just want to make sure that you can turn as fast as you can to respond to whatever may be going on the sides or behind you. So if you have yours way down at, I don't know, 5 or something, I would at least experiment with going a little bit higher so that you have that snappier reaction time. But that's something to just keep in mind when you're going through all of that. The next is FOV. And I did also make a recent video talking about some of the more secretive setting changes in this game that a lot of people aren't aware of. And I cover some of these things, but also some additional ones. So I'll put a link to that up in the corner if you want to go and check that out. And this is one of the things I covered in there. FOV is huge. You can see if I turn it down to 0, your game looks like that. You can kind of pretty drastically tell. And so the advantage of bumping it all the way up, especially in the DZ and PvP, is that you can see your peripheral so much better. And also the one below it was the, when you aim down sights, it'll apply the same benefit, so you can see a wider amount. So I highly recommend those, especially for PvP. The next two things are you want to... I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to have these, if I can actually find where they are. Show skills on group frame just means that if you do have teammates, you can see their skills in the bottom corner by their name. I think that does nothing but help. And then show numeric skill cooldown time just means that instead of a flat bar, when your skills are on cooldown, it'll give you a number. And especially in PvP, this is going to be very helpful, so you know the exact second that you can reproc that skill. It can come in handy. Some very, narrow timing, so I would certainly recommend that one. The next one up, if we go back to controls, I believe it's all the way at the bottom, you want to turn on... Here we go. Movement can exit cover, so you don't have to be stuck in cover trying to get out of it. You just want to be able to bunker in and then pull out with... Can I take cover on anything here? Yeah, here we go. It just means that basically if someone is rushing up and you need to get out of cover as fast as you can just pull back on your stick and you're out right away. You don't have to press a button, you don't have to do anything fancy. Out, start moving. The other one that was right next to it that I highly, highly recommend, if we go back down here, is move around corner speed is on fast. I would highly recommend you put this on fast. What that means is, if there's something I can demonstrate it on over here, basically, it's a lot, usually it would be like a slower, progression there with that line, and then you finally go around the corner. When you turn to fast, you can go around very quickly, and that can be very nice if someone's taking a snipe at you from the back or whatever. You can just get around really fast. If you do need to use cover, which again might not always be your best bet, but we'll talk about that. But that's something you want for sure, is to have that fast transition so you can get into different situations as fast as possible. Next up, if you go to, what is it under UI? Scrolling combat text, I would recommend floating, especially for PvP. This means that your damage numbers are going to show up to the right of your reticle and not right on it, and you can much more easily keep that reticle on your target when you're shooting with the damage numbers not showing up right at the same place. And then if we go to graphics, no, it's under accessibility. This one can be nice. I don't use it myself, but if you need to, if you switch it to the first one there, the DEU colorblind mode, it'll add a ring to any throwable object or object with a radius down on the ground. So something like a hive is now going to have this super white, bright, contrasted outline, so you can much more easily see when you're going to step into its radius. Same with grenades, same with any throwable or anything on the ground like that. And so, yeah, if you need that extra help, identifying and figuring out where things are, that can be very nice for you to have. Again, I don't use it myself, but it can be very nice. And then the last thing is that if you go to UI, you can, not audio, you can indeed customize your HUD. I don't have any special things, but if you're going into the DZ for the first time, this can be super nice to, a lot of people play with a bigger radar. They scale it up like that so that they can see stuff more easily. You could also, I cycle down here, somebody will move their group over here. I didn't actually know it scaled on the directional like that. That's pretty cool. So plenty of people do stuff like that, and it can be very useful, just depending on what sort of scenario you want to do. But especially in PvP, just to have the optimal setup for you can be useful, as I said. So experiment with all those and just keep those in mind as you head into your first PvP experiences. Alright, now we're going to begin to get into the actual guide here, and I think the best place to begin is with builds. Don't worry, we're going to cover all of the mechanical elements of PvP and how your playstyle should adapt, because that's what I think is the most important component to this guide, but it's undeniable that builds have a large part to play in your success with PvP in the Division franchise, and so I thought, let's get our build knowledge all set before we jump into the deep end, because anyone can put a build together, you just have to know what you're looking for. Let's begin with this. What makes a cheesy build versus a skillful one? Anyone? Bueller? The real answer is there isn't an objective answer. Does everybody have their own subjective preferences? Without a doubt. There are a number of builds that I just roll my eyes at when I fight against them in the DZ, but I'm sure the same could be, done to me by the person that I'm fighting. This really goes back to my mantra that I explained at the start. I can teach you my way, but I cannot teach you the right way. There are an endless number of builds that you can put together and use. Are all of them going to be successful? Nope. Are all of them going to be respected by your opponents? Not at all. So what I thought I would do before going in and giving you my personal advice and recommendation on some builds is explain to you the philosophy behind the overall meta in the Division 2's PvP, as well as explain why using certain build types is often frowned upon, and elaborate a bit on the kinds of reactions and responses you can anticipate receiving if you choose to use such builds. Again, I'm not saying you can't use them. I encourage you to go out and try whatever you'd like, but I've been playing this for 6 years, and I know how some people are going to react to certain build categories, and so I figured I would explain some of that to you and offer you a fair warning so that it doesn't come as a surprise if those reactions start coming your way. In general, my rule of thumb is that if it has a fair counter that doesn't make you change your entire build and playstyle to react to, it's fair game. Glass cannon builds, shotgun builds, sniper builds, skill damage builds like with a drone or a turret, shield builds. Now maybe I get more frustrated by some of those than others, but in some way or another I'm able to reasonably counter each of those types of builds I just listed without having to go out of my way to shut down that one specific build and player. For instance, glass cannon or sniper builds, play more passively, take less risks, flush them out of cover, and easily shoot them down. Shotgun builds, ensure the person stays as far away from me as possible, maybe switch up a free skill slot to something that'll deter them, alter my approach to combat. Shield builds, get that shield down, shooting it or EMP it, and then strike while the person is without their big ticket item. You see, a lot of these things can be reasonably reacted to and countered without being forced to alter your entire build and experience. On the other hand, you have what's been the worst offender to the DZ for close to 2 years now, status effects. Now, a lot of PvP players extend that offense to the entire class of running skill-focused builds. I disagree with that. Like I just mentioned, someone running a skill damage build with a drone, turret, oxidizer, chem launcher, whatever, I can adapt and counter to that. I think skills absolutely have a place in Division PvP as a tool to modify and enhance combat scenarios, but I don't believe they should dominate it, and that's what we've seen for so long now with status effects. I'm not going to go into the whole thing right now, but they're so widely hated because there's no reasonable way to counter or adapt to them. One application will kill you through the strongest of armor kits. There are no skills that can be used at lower skill tiers to offer even moderate protection, and yes, I'm including the booster hive here because of multiple factors. You have no chance to react to them, and we'll circle back to this, and the only real way to counter them is to run hazard protection. And I don't believe that being forced to run one specific build type just to survive against one other player is good game design. And that's the sentiment that you'll find if you choose to go into PvP with these types of builds. The worst offenders in this category are usually the fire sticky bomb, the shrapnel trap, and less but somewhat included the mortar turret. Again, it's entirely up to you what you choose to run when you enter into PvP. I'm not here to try and say, please don't use this. I just want you to know that if you choose to use those types of items, you're going to face some severe aggression both in-game and potentially receiving messages depending on which platform you're on. Is that a great thing and a great example of how things are right now? No. Do I wish the devs would have dealt with status effects ages ago so that didn't become such a deep problem? Yes. But ultimately, there's nothing that you or I can do about that, so I might as well let you know. And again, I think skills absolutely hold a place in Division PvP. My friend was saying the other day, and I totally agree, that after several patches of tuning and many balancing passes later, the Stinger Hive is actually a pretty solid model for how skills in PvP should be right now. Even at tier 0, it's a deterrent. You don't want to step into that red circle, and in that sense, it fulfills its role as a crowd control option, but it really deals minimal damage to you if someone is running it at like a tier 0 or a tier 1. Compare that to tier 6, it used to be blatantly OP, but now, while it still damages you for quite a bit, you want to shut that thing down, but you can still reasonably react, recover, and survive entering its radius for a moment by using an armor kit and adapting accordingly. I apologize if that's a bit off topic, I just want to try and provide you all with a little bit of context about the conversation and beliefs surrounding builds in the DZ and PvP. Which, speaking of, I now want to move into my build recommendations for PvP, and without question, I recommend this build right here that I've already done a build video for. The thumbnail is up on screen, it's linked in the top corner of the screen right now, and I will also leave a link in the description below. The best kind of build you can ask for, in my opinion, and especially for a beginner, is a self-reliable, low-intensive setup. I don't want to have to micromanage a bunch of buffs. I don't want to have to work around any kind of windows of damage. I just want something that's going to keep me alive and will neutralize my threats, and that's exactly what this build will offer you. I've been running it religiously for months. It's the thing you've seen running in the background this entire time. It's just great. What else can I say? So after this guide, I highly advise you go to that build video and take note of some of the items you need to acquire in order to put it together. However, I will also go into some detail in the section immediately following this one. Now that said, as I stated at the beginning of this guide, I cannot tell you what to do. I can teach you my way. I cannot teach you the right way. There are hundreds, thousands of build combinations in this game. That's what makes the Division so special, and so I don't want to be that person that's trying to shoehorn or limit your potential. However, as I said, I'm tailoring this guide to inform you on how I succeed at PvP personally, and running this build and similar ones of its caliber contribute to that greatly. So I can't underscore enough that you should at least try it, or be sure to watch the next section of the guide to get an understanding of why it's so powerful, so that you can take those lessons and incorporate them into your own setup that you may be wanting to try and put together. Additionally, if you're maybe looking for some other options, these two builds I'm putting the thumbnails for up on screen are also highly effective in PvP. While a bit less universally reliable, they certainly have their own niche and power threshold, and so I will link those below as well, and all three of these builds can be found in my Division 2 builds playlist tab under my channel's playlist category. But once more, if you truly are a beginner, then I recommend that central build above all the others. Alright, so the next thing that I want to try and do is explain what goes into making a build. Plenty of people, anyone can watch a build video, right? But if you don't understand why you're putting on the certain pieces and layouts that you are, then you're never going to understand, the ethos behind what goes into a build, especially one for PvP where, things can get just as complicated as they can in PvE. So as a template, I'm going to use the build that I just recommended to you, the main primary one that I think is great for all beginners to try out. In that sense, if you do pick up that build, then hopefully this will explain that a bit to you. And if you're just in general, you want to make your own build, hopefully this will give you a bit of an understanding as to what is required of you when you're really trying to think of what's going to make a successful build for PvP. So this is the build. Again, you're going to get the same layout and breakdown if you go to that build video, and that's a bit more of a concise way to see all the roles if you just need that. But for anyone who is newer to PvP, I highly recommend you give this a listen at least. I'm going to try to be concise, but obviously there's a lot that goes into this. So the main thing you want to think about for a build, especially when going into PvP, is how am I going to survive all of the different threats that I'm going to find there, other players, NPCs, different types of builds, and how am I going to have enough damage output, or, whether it's through guns or skills, to put down the enemies that are going to be coming my way, right? And so at least for this build, and in general too, that usually starts with what is my core attribute distribution. So in this case, I have 4 armor rolls and 2 weapon damage rolls. That gives me 1.5 million armor. You're going to hear a lot in a lot of PvP conversations that people will say, I'm running a 1.5 or 1.7. That usually correlates to how many blue rolls you have. So 4 blues usually gives you that 1.5 value, and 1.7 usually means 5 blues, etc. You can do the math, below or above that. And so for this one, I have 4 and 2, and that's usually my preferred setup for PvP. Let's talk about first the survivability part of it. Like I said, those are the 2 main things you want to talk about. How am I going to put people down? How am I going to survive those other people? The first step to surviving is 4 blues. Armor is key to surviving a lot of that stuff. Then I have the firewall specialization. This is by far the best PvP specialization. If you have not leveled this up, I highly recommend it. That mainly is because its medkit is just so strong. It gives you 200% of your armor and health over 10 seconds, meaning you can overheal beyond your total health value if you're getting shot in the middle of a fight, and that's why people use it so much, is because you can use it before the other person is dead, push them, start shooting them, and you're going to heal past the damage that they do to you, and then if you put them down, obviously you're back to full armor, ready to go for the next fight. It also gives you access to the Striker Shield, the exclusive skill, and this is incredibly good because shields are a very meta thing to use in PvP. Doesn't mean I like to use them, but if you don't use them, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Doesn't mean you have to. There are builds that certainly can work without them. The one I have on would work too. It just makes your time a lot easier, and so I would recommend it for a beginner PvPer. And the reason that the firewall one is so good is because it gives you damage bonus to anyone in front of you. You can see right there, 12%. That's because I have a few mods on there, 5 and 1. So usually it's 6, but I have 12 because of that. So I highly recommend Firewall as a beginner PvP spec for those reasons primarily. And so other than that, we have the Decoy, which again is a very strong skill in PvP. Takes away your name and your name from above your head, and it removes you from the radar and points the enemy towards your decoy wherever it's at. And it means you can basically move undetected, right, for the duration that it's up. And so that's also going to help with your survivability and your damage as well, because you can stay more hidden, take less damage, while also, having a bit of a surprise attack if you play it smartly. So once we move beyond that, then the survivability aspect of it, or I guess I should say as well, then my 2 talents are also skewed towards survivability. Unbreakable just gives you a free armor boost. If we switch it to the PvP stat there, gives you 50% of your armor when it's broken on a minute cooldown. And then Adrenaline Rush gives you 12% bonus armor, 3 potential stacks if there's 3 targets when they're within 10 meters of you. And so both of those are obviously more defensive focused talents. The nice thing about this build, and why I recommend it to any new PvP player, is because it's such a hands-off build, right? You get Unbreakable without having to think about it or work on it. You get Adrenaline Rush without having to think about it. And so it's very, how can I say this, low intensity as far as what you have to do going into a fight. You really just have to worry about getting the other person down. Now, in general, especially when you're making a PvP build, you have to think about, okay, if I'm focusing so much on my build just to surviving, and again, some people run 6 red builds, some people run whatever, but as a standard, if I'm putting so much into survivability, what pieces can I run then to amplify my damage to give myself enough power to be able to put people down, especially when both of my talents here are not focused on damage? The answer comes in, for one, the Fox's Prayers. These and the Contractor Gloves are 2 of the best in-slot items in the game for damage. That's because they come with damage to targets out of cover, which is a multiplicative bonus that is very strong, as you can probably guess. And so I have that there. You also, whatever gun you run, you want to get either damage to armor or damage to targets out of cover as your attribute, and that's really going to help you up your damage output, especially on a setup like this where you have lower base damage from the get-go. Next thing is I'm running 2 piece of Walkers and Harris, which again, I'm not using the Contractor's Gloves, but that's because I'm using 2 of this. I get 5% damage to armor from the brand bonus, and I also get an additional bit of weapon damage, which when I'm using 4 blues is a very nice way to counteract some of that loss and make up some of that damage so that I still have a very high damage output. Another thing to think about when making a PvP build, especially one with a gun, obviously it's going to be different if you make a skill build, but how am I reaching my crit chance cap? How am I, or crit overall cap? How am I going to bump up both of those attributes to make them a solid value? You can see I have 49 and 173 on this one, and so my answer to that for this build specifically is first I'm taking advantage of the Firewall exclusive mod, which is a 10% crit damage grip as opposed to the 5% one you can usually get there, so that's a little bit of an extra bonus. I'm using the Coyote's Mask exotic, which gives me a ton of crit values depending on what range I'm fighting people at. That's why I'm hovering at a 49% crit value, crit chance, because if I'm fighting in that middle range, which is pretty typical for an AR fight, then I'm getting right up to the cap without going over it and wasting any extra crit. I'm using one piece of Grupo Sombra to get 15% crit damage from that brand. So it's all about just figuring out where you can get these different values and mixing them all into one to culminate in your highest crit value. Of course, I'm rolling crit everywhere too. That's the only stats you really have to worry about. And then as well, if you do have your watch maxed out, you're going to get those nice benefits of 10 chance, 20 damage, so that should make sense. Again, when it comes to your weapon, if you're going to try this build out the way that I have it, I certainly highly recommend an AR. They're the most versatile and probably the easiest gun to start with, in my opinion, because they can be good up close, they have that range, they just have a lot of flexibility. And so whatever gun you choose with, whether it's an AR, SMG, LMG, you'll know those are a little bit more questionable. You want to make sure you have, in most cases, in 95% of the cases, you want to have the one-piece brand bonus that gives you that gun class's damage. So one piece of Fenris here gives me 10% AR damage, and of course that is going to, again, help make up for the fact that I have 4 blues. Again, I have 2 weapon damage rolls, and then I'm getting extra damage from this chest piece's brand bonus, and from the 1 and 2 pieces of Walker's and Harris, as well as from the special attribute on the Fox's Prayer. So you can begin to see that even if you contribute a lot of core attributes to your survivability, there are a lot of other ways you can make up your damage, and in a lot of builds, that's really what it's about. How can I get the most of these 2 different things to combine into the best solid experience so that I can tackle every challenge that's coming my way? And as I said earlier, I'm speccing into crit chance and damage everywhere on every piece here. Unless you're going for some more specialized build, this is what I'm going to recommend for the majority of everything. Crit dominates all. Headshot can be good, but I think that's a later on thing for PvP. If you're a beginner, if you're the target audience for this guide, I highly recommend you invest in a crit build to start with, and then you build from there. Maybe you want to try something with headshot and weapon handling. I just put out a Bighorn build the other day where I did that, but that's more advanced stuff in my opinion. Crit is going to give you the best experience from the beginning because it boosts your damage anywhere you hit someone on their body. Whether you hit them in the head or in the chest or in the legs, you're going to get that extra damage. The same goes for my mods here. I have 3 crit damage mods. So whatever crit values you need to, again, bump up your overall crit stats is what you should invest on there. And then also on your gun, you want to make sure you're trying to move away from handling attachments. I see a lot of people go into PvP with stability muzzles and whatever grips. Crit is going to be the way to go. If you can get used to the recoil, you don't need those things, trust me. Some of the best ARs, it's hard for me to explain why they're good. Like, it's just the distribution between RPM and damage that combined makes a lot of these better than the others. So the Carbine 7 has been my favorite for a while. The FAMAS is really great. The Honey Badger is in a very similar class to the Carbine. It loses out 1 mod slot, but you get 5% extra total damage because of it, or base damage, I should say. The Police M4 is good. Those ones in general that have that pretty decent RPM, but then also a high amount of base damage, are going to be very reliable. Something like the AK that has much higher base damage but lower RPM, again, can be good, but it's a little bit more situational. And then the stuff with much higher RPM and less total damage, it's kind of meh as well. So really, it's that sweet spot in the middle: Carbine, FAMAS, Police M4, Honey Badger. Ones like those are really going to serve you well. And again, for this beginner setup is what I recommend. Additionally, for your gun talent, there aren't that many that are good for PvP. Optimist, Strained, InSync usually are your top 3. So I would recommend you start with one of those, and then you can, again, experiment from there. Optimist, for me, is a very reliable one. That's why I go with that. But again, make your own conclusions. I think that's the majority of what goes into a build. Again, it's hard to cover everything, and I try to be concise here, but I think that should give you a decent understanding of what goes into conceptualizing and making a build for PvP. Again, it boils down to those 2 core things. How do I have enough survivability to deal with all the threats that are coming at me? And how do I then take that and also have enough damage to put down those threats so that I'm not just trying to fight eternally and I can actually end a fight. To wrap up this portion of the guide, I think it's important to touch on the distinction between your build and your own personal skill when it comes to PvP, because this is something I see a lot of people talking about. Which of the two is more important? Which kind of distribution do they both have? Here's my answer. Both are obviously important. A great build can do you wonders against someone with a mediocre build, and a very experienced, refined skill set can have devastating outcomes against a less experienced player. But if I had to put a number on it, and I think I might be in the minority here, I would say your build comprises anywhere from 30 to 40% of your PvP prowess, and personal skills and skill level comprises 60 to 70% of that same thing. I know a good number of people would disagree here. I think I've seen people present kind of the exact opposite stats in that regard, but after playing this franchise's PvP for the past 6 years, I would much rather enter the DZ with an unoptimized build with the full range of my skill set than I would rather enter in there with a god-rolled setup and none of my own personal advantages. So as important as builds are to the Division's PvP, that's why I wanted to dedicate such a sizable amount of this guide to them. I do truly believe that personal knowledge, experience, and skill in fighting other players takes the lead in what's most important when it comes to Division's PvP. And that's really the whole reason why I wanted to make this guide in the first place, because I think it is the most important aspect, while also probably being the least talked about amongst Division PvP creators and content. So I am very excited to jump into the next section here, which is individual PvP tips and guidelines for your actual playstyle and the moment-to-moment gameplay. So if you're going to pay attention to any part of this guide, this would now be the time. Let's get into it. And so now we arrive to the actual gameplay portion of this guide, which is really what I was most excited to do, because I feel like this is the part that is left out of the majority of Division PvP content, and this is really what I want to try and nail home and teach you guys, because I think it really is some of the most crucial stuff to PvP in the Division. As I was just saying, personal player skill is a very, very large amount of what goes into being successful in PvP, and that begins with situational awareness. I'm titling this category Situational Awareness is King, because I'm of the personal belief that it is the most paramount thing that you can have in your arsenal in order to succeed in the Dark Zone and in PvP in general. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean a couple of things. First off, you need to know the layouts of the Dark Zone in order to succeed, right? And that's only going to happen by you going in there and actually learning the different things. Now, why is that important? I'll tell you right now, because, and I'm going to have my friend Nova here help us demonstrate in these next few gameplay portions, so be sure to leave a comment telling him thanks. Let's say that I'm over here, and I'm going to flag Rogue. Now, if he starts running at me, let's say I'm trying to fight him in a regular fight, and let's say I need to retreat for whatever reason, there's another one coming at me, I need to know my escape options. I can either go up that one, those stairs right there, I can get an advantage point on him, I could run straight back, I could use the truck as my cover, I could take the alley to my right, or I could go down there, there's a tunnel that way. I know all of these things because I've been in the Dark Zone for that long, and whereas if you come in here for the first time and you don't know what you're doing, you don't know your escape routes, then you're going to have a really tough time, because part of the Dark Zone and the Division PvP in general is navigating your environment and being able to be successful with those things. So I can't underscore enough how vital it is to know the layouts of each of the 3 Dark Zones. And like I said, that's nothing that can come without you putting time into learning the actual environments, but I so mean it when I say it's going to drastically alter your experience by knowing your different routes, your different escape options, knowing every alley, every nook and cranny you can use to your advantage, because the environment is a huge part of the Division PvP, especially in the Dark Zone. Another big component to situational awareness is the PvE side of the Dark Zone, landmarks and NPCs. I need to know which places can possibly spawn landmarks. Like right now, we're lucky this spot isn't a landmark. That's right outside the checkpoint, but it can be. And in Division 2, the landmark locations rotate. So I know there's one that can be there. This one is up. There can be one right here at this point. There can be one right here at the, I think that's the clock tower. There can be one there. There can be one there. There can be one underground right there. Over here, you get the idea there. Like, you have to know where all these things are so that when you are in combat, when you do have, you know, these unpredictable scenarios happening, you need to know, okay, can I currently retreat to this location, or am I going to be bombarded by a bunch of ads? And similarly right there, those ads just snuck up on me because I'm in my menu, and that's another very important part, is you have to be aware of what's going on around you, and that all falls under the category of situational awareness. And a big part of that is your radar, which we will talk about, especially regarding players, right now. So this may be a bit of a silly analogy, but I really want to underscore the importance of your radar. In PvE, maybe you don't think the radar is that important. Sure, you're going to use it to seek out that one last ad that you can't find in the back of the room that's holding you up from progressing. Maybe you're going to use it every now and then for whatever purpose, but in the dark zone, your radar is your lifeline. It is everything that you need to know in one little corner of the screen. Again, that's why I said earlier, that's why it can be important to increase the size of it if you need that, because I'm serious that it truly is a vital component to your experience. And part of that is you want to treat it like a mirror in your car. Maybe, again, I can't speak for outside the US, but if you take driving school, they're going to tell you, you look at your mirror, what's it say in the rule book, every like 3 seconds, right? Which obviously you don't do after a long time. But after you have been driving for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, it becomes second nature. You glance up, check your mirror. Who's behind you? Who's around you? It's the same concept here. Your radar lets you know everything that's going on outside of your peripheral, and that can really help you determine these situations that are coming your way, and it again can help you figure out what you want to do. Do I need to retreat? Do I need to dig in? Do I need to find a better position? All of that stuff. All right, so I had to reposition a little bit, but the point that I was making is you don't have to stare in a certain direction or see someone physically with your eyes to know that they're coming, right? That's the whole point of this, is that you have to be able to use the tools at your disposal to be able to make the most of your situation. So let's say I'm defending right here as a rogue for whatever reason. I got someone coming this way, maybe I'm taking a few shots. I really want to keep an eye on them to know how close they're getting to me. But as soon as this first guy that I've killed comes out of the checkpoint, I'm going to know, and that's all because of my radar. So let's say I'm watching over here, taking a few shots. Oh, look at that. Something popped up on the radar. I automatically know he's there. Now if I turn, I see his name, but I knew he was there before I even had to look. And that's true for anywhere you are in the dark zone, whether you're at the checkpoint or not. And that's really the whole point of why your radar is such an important tool in the dark zone, and that's truly why I think situational awareness is king and probably the most important factor to succeeding in PvP, especially in the dark zone. This next one is also critically crucial, and that is that you always need to stay on the move. I am not kidding that my friend group and I, ever since the days of the Division 1, have a little DZ code that we like to follow, and we always joke about it with each other, where rule number 1 of the dark zone is never stand still in the dark zone. You never stand still, for more than one reason. Originally, that came from the fact that you didn't want to get flagged on, because originally you didn't have to flag. People would just shoot you in the head even when they were not rogue and just kill you instantly. And so that's where it came from, but the core idea of that still exists today, both when you're not fighting. If you want to get flagged on, then obviously sometimes you deliberately stand still, and sometimes people will do it. But even if you're not, say you're just, you got a group of people standing around here, just stay on the move a little bit, so that if they do flag up, it's much harder for them to get the jump on you. You can start, get into a sprint right away, start dodging those bullets. But also in combat, you never want to stand still. There was a perk in the Division 1 called On the Move, and all of us ran it because it just gave us free damage resistance every time we got a kill. It was that if you got a kill while you're moving, you get like 20% damage resistance. It was just a free proc for us every single time, because you always stay moving when you're fighting, when you're not fighting, whenever. It's a core ideal to the dark zone. So to demonstrate this, and the most easiest application of this idea is in, a regular PvP or 1v1 scenario where you're fighting somebody. You don't want to stand still and just be shooting at them, trying to follow them wherever you're going. You want to be on the move yourself, trying to dodge their bullets as much as you can. So I'm going to flag up here, and for this first one, I'm just going to stand still, while Nova here is going to act as a usual PvP player would, and let's see how that goes for me. Oh, my bullets are trying to hit him, and he's moving around, so I hit him a lot less, but I'm a still target, and he just beat me, right away. So let's run that again, and then we'll both play like that, and we'll see how it goes. So this time when I come in, we're going to demonstrate it in such a way where, let's say he's rogue down the alley, and I'm going to push up there the way that a, quote-unquote, experienced PvP player would, with the proper movement and such, and you'll see how much harder it is for him to kill me and for me to die, and hit me overall. So go ahead and flag. Alright, so he's rogue down there. Let's say he's already killed me a time or two. Now I'm going to push up and see how well this goes. I'm not going to stand still and just try and shoot him or go in a straight line. I'm going to use the cover to my advantage. Get up there, keep the movement going. Oh, now that I'm right up there, can't do much because I already have so much extra health from when we started. And just like that, it's a whole lot easier to win fights than if I'm trying to stand there and just trade bullets with him and I can't stay on target. So that's the general principle of always stay on the move. Whether you're out of combat, whether you're in combat, whatever, just do it. All right, this next point builds off of what we just talked about, as well as kind of feeds into the next thing, which is why I said these are all very interconnected. But the big point here is that you very much want to play around reloads and armor kit applications in PvP. So let's talk about the reload first, and I'll show you what I mean when I say playing around the reload. So if I'm Rogue and the two of us are going to engage in a 1v1, he starts shooting me. As soon as I see he goes to reload, that's when I start shooting him. I want to move around, dodge his bullets until then, and while he has that second and a half gap of not shooting, that's my advantage and my time to get my damage in while he can't do anything back to me. And it's a very similar mentality with armor kits, especially, like I said, Firewall, Medkit, and, Survivalist, and the ones that heal over time are some of the most prevalent ones in PvP because they're so strong and because they give you so much healing. And so one of the best things you can do is just to not engage with it and avoid fighting while the person has it, because 9 out of 10 times you're probably not going to win. So let's say the two of us are fighting again, and if I start hitting him a little bit, he's going to go behind that truck to start kitting. I don't have enough time to get up there and kill him before he procs it, so now I'm just going to run around, let him waste that buff out, and you can see it right next to his name, how much longer he has on that buff duration. And then once it runs out, that's my moment to now start fighting him, because he's not getting that healing over time, and then it's not too hard. So that's the general principle there of armor kits and reloads. You very much want to play around them in order to have the best chances at success. Alright, so this is kind of a larger extension and application of the point that we just talked about, but this game, the Division franchise overall, is very much an animation game. What do I mean by that? I mean that animations are whether it's cheesy or not, it's the way that the game is designed, they're a crucial and key time to get damage in, because again, someone is unable to deliver the same thing back to you. So this little zone that we're in right here, right next to the Alpha checkpoint of East, we found this a little while ago and we call it the Brawl Zone, which is just kind of a, mess around spot that we'll go to if we have a bunch of people chasing us, and that's because this is a good way to demonstrate it, that if someone has to jump up here to get us, we can almost get a kill guaranteed unless they're like super tanky and have a bunch of armor regen. And so if I flag Rogue and have him jump up here, you'll see that he can't do anything while he's jumping up. I'm able to kill him before he can even do anything. So I think that's a good demonstration of this general point, but I'll show you a few other spots too. So that spot was kind of an extreme example of the general point I'm trying to make, but the same idea applies to anywhere in the Dark Zone, and it very much factors into when you're in the middle of a fight, whether you're trying to defend a position or you're trying to fall back and find a good spot to turn around and fight. It can apply to anywhere that any character has to perform an animation. That's very much going to factor into your fight. So if I flag right here, let's say I've been running and now this guy's chasing me, he comes down the stairs and I prompt him to go over that. Again, that whole window, he can't do anything, and he's already, losing half his armor, even in that half a second that he has to hop over that. And so again, another very good demonstration of that point. And then the last example I'll give is ropes and ladders by extension, because they're very prevalent in the game. And the reason why you'll see a lot of people usually defending spots with ropes or, high up vantage points is that obviously not only do you get the height advantage, but if someone pushes up, like he's going to right now if I'm Rogue, then the second that he gets to the top and I can see him, I'm going to get all the damage in, and again, he's dead before he has a chance to do anything. So, as cheesy or as unfortunate as a game design choice as it may be, animations are very crucial in this game in terms of determining the fight, determining where you're going to defend, and all of that stuff. Alright, and this next point is again another very important thing to keep in mind, and that is that cover is crucial, but not in the way that you're thinking. The traditional type of cover in the Division in PvP is typically not that great, because while you can certainly hit someone just as easily from in cover and out of cover, you're locking yourself into one spot, and you're making yourself that much more of an easy target because someone can just lock onto your head, not move their reticle, and you're going to be dead before you even know it. The kind of cover that is crucial in PvP is that of line of sight, and line of sight is a huge thing to keep in mind anytime you're fighting. If I'm fighting him like this, half of my body is covered. It's that much harder to hit me. So it can be important in regular 1v1s, but it can also be incredibly important when you have to retreat or run away, and that's kind of what we want to demonstrate right now. So if I flag, and let's say the two of us are going to get into a little bit of a fight here, we'll show each other up a little bit. Let's say I need to retreat. If I run in a straight line, just like this, I need to get away, he's still going to be able to shoot me, and he takes me down, right? Whereas if I come back and actually use cover to my advantage, I'm going to make it very hard for him to hit me, and that can come in situations when you are retreating, when you are in a fight, whether it's a group fight, a solo fight, whatever. So let's show you that right now. Alright, so again, this time when I show it, I'm not going to run and start bunkering in cover and try to shoot him, because again, that makes me an easy target. I'm sitting in one spot and he can hit me just as easily as any other time. But what I am going to do is, let's say we're doing another fight here. We'll both have a little bit of damage. I need to retreat. I'm going to make it as hard as it is for him to hit me, and then I use that line of sight to my advantage. I'm not going to bunker in and lock myself into one spot, but I use the line of sight. I'm going to keep retreating, go again to this side. I know he can't see me very well. He has to reposition, keep using it to my advantage, make it harder for me to hit. And that's the entire idea. You don't want to lock yourself up by using a bunch of cover. You just want to move as fluidly as you can between all of these objects to make it as hard as possible for your opponent to hit you. Let's talk about another lesson that I learned in the DZ long ago in the Division 1, and that is that retreating is in fact winning. Now you might be thinking, what the hell is he talking about? The fact of the matter is that in the Dark Zone, you're going to find yourself in unwinnable scenarios. That's stemming from a composition of all possible factors. The number of opponents coming at you, the environment around you, and how your build is set up. Now obviously 2 out of 3 of those things you can't change. You can't snap your fingers and magically make enemies disappear. You can't change your build on the fly while in combat. The thing you can change, however, is your environment. And this is part of the reason why I stressed so hard earlier of why it's so important to know the layouts of each of the 3 DZs, is that, and this applies more to when you're rogue yourself, but if you know that you have no chance of taking down these 3 people coming at you with your current build, then your options are either to give up and die, which is lame, or to retreat to a different location, better position, and give yourself a fighting chance. There is zero shame whatsoever in retreating in Division PvP. Anyone who says otherwise is a fool. If you want to win, if you want to pull off those insane clip-worthy moments, then you need to understand that where you're fighting can be just as impactful to a fight as who you're fighting. And with the right strategy in play, you can kill anyone. And this is where you're beginning to see some of the building blocks connecting here. Because knowing the DZ layouts is going to provide you with an unmatched level of tactical decisions to make, and realizing the Division is such an animation-driven game is going to allow you to conceptualize different locations and scenarios in which you might be able to survive an otherwise unwinnable circumstance, and sometimes the only way in which you're going to survive the retreat to this new tactical location is by using cover, quote-unquote, to your advantage, and blocking line of sight to your opponents as much as you can while you run. So take it from someone who's been skating around the Dark Zone for 6 years now, retreating is winning. You'll see my team and I pull back to different locations in every PvP clip I upload, and that's because where you fight can be just as important as who you're fighting, and the best place to fight can change from engagement to engagement. Wrapping up the more gameplay-driven portion of the guide here, I want to circle back to another kind of overarching idea here to keep in mind, and this goes on the list of things that you're just going to have to put time in order to master. As we talked about before, your watch level is something you're just going to have to spend the time leveling up in order to gain the full benefit. Learning each of the 3 DZ layouts is something you're just going to have to spend time doing in order to properly function and strategize as you fight. And building up your RPG knowledge base is another thing you're just going to have to take the time to do. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that being able to identify or at least get a rough estimate of what loadout your enemy is running is going to be crucial to determining your long-term success. Anyone can win a random 1v1 by circumstance, right? But if you want to hold your own against 2, 3, 4 other players and pull off manhunts, then eventually you're just going to have to be able to use your context clues and tap into your RPG knowledge base on the fly in order for that to influence the tactical decisions you make in combat. What exactly do I mean? Different gun types, skills, armor bar values, anything I can identify a player as wielding as they approach me goes into my decision making from there on out. Do I hear Isaac tell me they have a stinger hive? I'm going to let them come to me and try and take them down before they get too close and can drop that so it starts damaging me. Do I see them bunkering into cover, half a block down with a very light looking armor bar? Chances are they're getting ready to aim at me with a sniper. I need to break line of sight and, modify my plan from there. And so my point is that any player with a decent amount of time in this game is going to know what a lot of different items and combinations are. But to be able to identify and sometimes just guess at what someone is running when they approach you, and to be able to sync that with your knowledge of the RPG systems in this game to efficiently impact your decision making in real time, that's a skill that you're just going to have to play PvP for a while to develop. And while it might suck in the interim, I promise that it's just another tool you're eventually going to have at your disposal, and it will make every fight that much easier if you can get some semblance of an idea as to what's coming your way. And to close out this portion of the guide, I want you to forget everything I just taught you and remember this one invaluable lesson above all else. Dying is inevitable. I don't care if this is your first time stepping into the DZ or you've played the Division for 20,000 hours since it launched in March 8th of 2016. Everybody dies in Division PvP, whether it's from some OP build setup you had no chance against, or someone legitimately outplayed you in an otherwise fair fight, or you got ganged up on by several other players. Everybody dies. I die every time I go into the DZ, and you're going to die too. A frickin' lot. But you should never ever let that discourage you, because as I mentioned way at the beginning of this, every fight, every encounter is a learning experience. You can always learn something from each fight you partake in. And if you're not, and you choose to get upset over dying because you weren't good enough, quote unquote, then you're not doing it right. And if you ever come across the douchebag who claps on your dead body, or the jerk who sends you a toxic message after you died at a 5-count manhunt, do not spend a single ounce of energy worrying about that. At this point in my Division career, I get more entertainment than anything else from other people's toxicity, because it's hilarious to me how much stakes people put behind PvP. Is it intensive? Yes. Is it oftentimes stressful? No question. Does it feel immensely satisfying to defy the odds and win a 1v4? Without a doubt, but very few people are going to reach that point without dying a dozen times first and learning their lobby's players and their strategies, and adjusting their builds accordingly to match the challenge. And anyone who tries to say otherwise, that they never die and they're just so good, they're lying. Not to you, but to themselves, because the point of PvP, as I said, is to give you that unbeatable challenge, that endless difficulty, and you'd be a fool to think that it doesn't come with its fair share of death along the way. So, if nothing else, just remember that while you're on your journey to becoming the next apex predator in the DZ, don't sweat it when you hit the floor a few times along the way. It's all a part of the process. Alright, now to circle back a little bit, I want to briefly touch on two of the more side component things here. These aren't central to this guide, but I was still wanting to offer at least a little bit of an introduction to the concepts, beginning with team comp and callouts. As I mentioned at the beginning of this guide, learning to rely on yourself and tackle challenges in the DZ solo is the best way, in my opinion, to get acclimated. However, if you do find yourself in a group, what changes? Well, functionally, very little. You should still apply all of the fundamentals that I covered, really making your radar your lifeline, always be on the move, play an individual 1v1 fight the exact same way. The big difference is that having teammates introduce is it A, gives you an additional layer of consideration when you're making those real-time tactical decisions that we talked about. Maybe a particular location wouldn't work for you to defend solo, but perhaps it's ideal with 3 to 4 people. Or maybe you're able to have all of your teammates run different builds to keep yourselves more protected. But it also comes with some considerations that you have to keep in mind, like instead of just managing yourself, keeping track of how many armor kits and ammo everyone has, and knowing who's the most likely to die based off of those things, and knowing that if they do die, where do we tell them to respawn? How do we rotate through the environment to regroup with them? And so for those specific cases, and in general, concise and effective callouts are key. When you're in a big team fight, you don't really have the time to be having the discussion about where do you think the best place to respawn would be. Sometimes you just have to say respawn at the safe room, and you just have to make that work because there's no time to debate about it. Additionally, the things you pick up on your radar, people you see approaching, observations you make about what enemies are running, all of that should be communicated to your teammates, at least what's relevant in it. And again, you'll just have to develop the communication skills to get that all across to your teammates in a concise and helpful way. So I think that's about all you need for a brief introduction. Having a team is great. More people to rely on, more builds, perks, and talents to share between you all to help one another out, but it's also important that you figure out the best way for you all to communicate and work together. Otherwise, you might as well just be 4 solo players. Alright, and then let's also briefly touch on conflict. Anyway, as I said, it changes some truly fundamental things about PvP in the Division, and that's why I think it would be an awful place to try and learn PvP. Namely, it removes your radar, your lifeline, as I've said this whole time through, and you have a heavily reduced armor kit count, which in combination leads to a high volume of, again, quote-unquote cheesy, that's all up to interpretation, builds and tactics, lots of camping, lots of pretty unfair scenarios. The main thing I can suggest when going into conflict is to take things slow. Whereas the DZ is all about constant movement and checking what's around you with all of the contextual clues that are offered, conflict is really about slowly progressing through the map, taking in your surroundings visually, and just trying to guess and plan where people are going to hop out from. That's about all I can offer, and that probably sounds pretty unhelpful because it is. Conflict sucks. You're probably going to get spawn camped, you'll get one shot without knowing where someone was. It's pretty bad, and I don't care to try and redeem it with fancy wordplay, so let's move on. Alright, so to close things out, what I thought might be kind of useful after, giving you the rundown of all the fundamentals that I think are important in PvP, is to dedicate a little bit of time here to a live commentary kind of gameplay portion. Give you guys a live look at some of my thought process that I go through while I engage in different PvP situations, and maybe that might give you a sense of how all of these things culminate together in order to enhance your PvP experience. So we can see right there, Eastbound Extraction just popped up, so let's head over there and see what's going on over at the East Extraction. Alright, so it just said that 2 people went rogue down in the bottom left. That's a great way to keep track of that stuff. I don't know where they are because it doesn't give you an indicator, but if you open your map, you will get a little bit of a pulse every few seconds that should, in theory, show you where they are, although sometimes it doesn't show up. And I don't know if it's going to show it. I saw him a second ago by the safe room when I loaded into that checkpoint, but let's see if they're pulling up to this extraction or not. Another person just went rogue. 0.2 kilometers away, so that probably is still the safe room, yeah. So if I had to guess, this person is probably just farming. Or there's no one here at all if there's still ads laying around. There they are. So I'm going to drop my decoy so when I flag he can't see my name. Be harder for him to identify where I am. He dropped one as well. Already got his unbreakable. You saw that's why I got free armor back right there. He got really unlucky when that suicide bomber went for him. Oh, he's going to try and pop a kit as soon as he gets over there. And I'm not going to push that right away. I'm going to go and break my own line of sight and pop my own kit. And now we're going to engage through this back alley here. I knew that's where he was going as soon as he started going that direction. I still have a tiny bit of my buff left, so I might get a little bit of an advantage. Pull out my secondary. And just like that, we won the engagement. So obviously there were a lot of, oh my goodness, unknown factors that went in there. Obviously when the ads pushed, that went against his favor when the suicide bomber exploded on him. And when I pushed him in the alley here, I had about second and a half of advantage of my medkit still being up, so I got a little bit of free healing, and that gave me just enough of an edge to take him out. So let's head towards those rogues now at the safe room, and we'll see what kind of trouble we can get into over there. Alright, so I see he's coming up again right here. This is actually a different guy, but I'm going to take cover there, pop my kit, and he is probably dead because he has no advantage coming at me like that. Yeah. He's still got good damage in. Don't get me wrong. I still had my unbreakable up, so I was still going to get quite a bit of free health. And so it says I've been pulsed. Obviously, that's a great way to know if someone's coming at you. I see something on the radar up ahead, so I assume that's a player because I don't see any NPCs. Behind me, I know that's NPCs because I was just there, and it's bright red, which means it's closer rather than further. Something popped up a little bit to the right here, and you can see someone's right there. I'm going to drop this because it looked like there were two of them. I saw two different names. And yeah, they're coming at me right there. So now I have to think about where can I retreat to where I can really get the best advantage on them. Right here is a super long alley, and those are really great for these types of situations because they have to go down this entire hallway with no cover to get to me. So let's bunker in right here and see if we can pull them around this way. Because this is probably my best bet at the moment, 2v1, when they both have a decent amount of armor, as you saw. I've been pulsed, it still says they're generally in that direction. But maybe they're not pushing. Let's do this so that I have a bit of concealment while I push up. So they just killed somebody else. That madman guy was one of the ones who was chasing me originally. They're 130 meters. So they're either towards the extraction or they're... I hear a sticky bomb over here. So we're still concealed, but that's going to end in a second when the decoy expires. So they now can see that I'm approaching. I see one right there. No, they're going to push me. They might have both died. I see at least one player. Let's get my decoy up again. I'll throw it off to the side, and then we'll get in there and see what's going on. There was a guy. There we go. We got two of them. So they don't know I'm right here. Let's see if I can get the jump on one. I can, but his friend is right there. Break line of sight kit as soon as I can. These ads aren't going to help me. So let's put them between the players and me. Again, I'm going to make it as hard as it is for them to hit me as possible while I retreat. And they both have high armor, high damage builds, as you saw from that brief moment that I fought them. So I really don't want to get too close until I'm fully ready. Or until I have some sort of an advantage that I can use. I see something behind me on my radar. And that looks like a player. 3 players coming my way, so good thing I looked on the radar, because otherwise they would have gotten the jump on me immediately. So as you can see, the radar is quintessential to your DZ experience, because you have to know what's coming at you from all directions, otherwise you're going to get jumped like that. And that's not going to work out. So we got 3 coming here. Let's use this alley now that I talked about earlier, but I'm not going to be able to hold it against 4 people, even if I get 1 down. Broke one's armor, but see, they've already got an advantage coming up. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this, frankly. Pop this kit. They're already right on me. Not looking great. So really, sometimes there's just not much you can do. 3 of them, they all have pretty PvP-ready builds. Even if, you know, the best of the environment is to your advantage, sometimes there's just not much you can do. It really depends on the build you're running. And if I had more damage, I probably could have taken 1 down, but of course I'm running one that gives me both damage and survivability. So right there's probably not much I could have done, but that should give you a decent idea of some of the situations that can arise. So Isaac just told me there's a rogue agent nearby. You can see the red decoy means that they're a rogue. or if I was rogue, it would be red as well, but I'm not. So that means that they are. These guys just dropped their decoy, so they might flag on me. I'm going to push back a little bit. That's always kind of a telltale sign if they pop a bunch of their skills that they might flag. There's a lot of people here, so it's going to be hard for me to go rogue. I kind of want to wait for one of them to give you a bit of the opposite perspective in that regard. Because obviously 1v, however many are here, 6 or 7, 8, usually isn't going to go very well. Maybe in Division 1, but we're no longer in the Division 1. So as you can see, even though no one is flagging yet, most of us are staying on the move. That guy's in his menu, I think, and he's in a group, so there's not a ton of risk for him standing still. But I'm not going to stand still and let myself become an easy target for them to flag. And you can see everyone is doing the same thing. And that's why I say, always stay on the move. It's very, very, very vital. To be honest, though, I'm getting a little tired of everyone just standing here, so let's see if I sit still. Go into an emote if that prompts somebody to flag. See what we can do. Ghost is a rogue, killed someone 124 meters away. Maybe they'll flag while I'm in my map, but let's see if we can figure out what direction he's in. Again, in theory, it's supposed to pop up a thing and show you where they are, but it doesn't always. Rogue agent detected. That means he's either getting closer or somebody flagged. I assume that means he got within range. But I don't really know what direction he's in. Don't see much happening up by the checkpoint. There's some ads that way, but I don't think they really prompted that. So I guess we wait until somebody flags here. Alright, there we go. 3 of them just flagged right here. One guy's already down. And so now it begins. I'm going to get that one. He's already down. They're going to sit behind the van, block as much line of sight as they can. He gave up, and he's going to respawn as quick as he can at the safe room. So obviously, Meep there has his kit up, but he's about to run out. So this is going to be an easy kill right here from everybody shooting him. The other one got back in the alley here because that's going to be their best defensible position once the other one spawns. He has a good sight on there, so I'm going to break line of sight. And he's going to back up probably midway down there till the guy can come out one of the doors. Or he's going to dip to the left into the... Yep, he's in the landmark over here. And there's only 2 ways out besides the way he just went in. And one of those is this driveway right here. So he's going to have to reload. I'm going to get in there, get some damage in. And he is down. If I were him, I would have kept going straight down the alley and waited until he could regroup with some of his friends. Because I was going to do his best bet. One of them got the timer, though, it looks like. Or this is the other guy that was rogue. And to break line... see, he still shot me around the corner. Still, though, if I hadn't broken line of sight, it would have died. He's right here. I have my kit up. I'm going to press my advantage. But there are still 2 of them, so I'm going to jump down. If he jumps down, he'll be in that falling animation. I could get easy damage. He's going to go back up. I'm going to leave my decoy down here. See if I can sneak up on him a little bit. He was already on the stairs and he was decoyed, so I didn't even see him there. So you can see how lethal decoys are. And that should give you a sense, especially, it's the same thing in Conflict. If you don't have that situational awareness, you know, you're blind in a sense. And it's very important to have all that stuff when you're going into a fight. Alright, so we're back out right here. They're all doing this. They seem to have a pretty good hold in that landmark. So what I think I might do is drop my decoy and go around and see if I can get the jump on him. Because he's about to be running right up here, I think. He's right on me. So I barely got out of line of sight there, able to pop a kit. He's in there. Someone else got him with a sticky bomb. Oh no, that's one of the friendlies. Never mind. So Reaper is up there. He's probably going to die before I even get to him because he's running out there into a bunch of them. Yeah. And so there you have it. I feel like that's a pretty sufficient look at both ends of the spectrum there. You saw me as Rogue. You saw how I tackled that situation when they were Rogue. And so hopefully I think that gives you a good demonstration of a lot of the fundamentals and ideals that I've tried to convey throughout the duration of this guide. So I really hope that helped. Oh, what's this? You've made it to the end. Congratulations. You have officially graduated RogueGold's School for PvP, and you're now ready to enter into the DZ and discover what lurks in the shadows. Division PvP is a complex, ever-evolving experience. So while I certainly hope that this guide has provided you with the fundamental ideas to keep in mind that the game itself does not offer, the truth is you're just going to have to get in there and experience things for yourself. As with a lot of things in life, there's a lot you can learn in a classroom, but there's also a lot that you can't. And that remaining stuff is only going to come to you if you get out in the field and you put the work in. So I truly hope this has offered you the baseline knowledge and understanding to feel as though you're ready to venture into PvP, and I wish you the very best on your journey to experiencing and comprehending the truly unique experience that Division PvP is. As I said earlier, it's offered me my most memorable moments in gaming ever, and so it would be so fulfilling to me to help even just one person begin their journey on appreciating it as much as I do. So I really do hope that at least some of you will give it an honest shot, because that's really all you can do, right? You're either going to like it or you won't, but you won't know until you try. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. I sincerely hope that this guide for beginner PvPers in the Division was helpful. Please leave any and all of your feedback on it down below, as well as any questions that you may have. As I said at the beginning, I hope people will leave both their questions and their own perspectives down there, and I hope the comments on this video can become almost a guide within themselves. That's the hope anyway. I will, as always, read each and every comment and try to contribute as best I can, so I hope to see you there. If you've made it to the end of this extremely long video, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support, and I hope this helped. That's going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.